right, our next subject is ecology. Ecology is the study of organisms and their environment, or organisms' interaction with each other. And there's a lot of different levels of ecology. You can study it, according to this diagram, you can study it on the individual level or genetic diversity. And basically that's a population function. You can study it in terms of society, that is in terms of organisms interacting with each other. And you can also study it on the community level, which is the actual physical environment and how the physical environment affects where things are and the way things are interacting, etc. There are, if you look worldwide, there are, trying to get this here, places of terrestrial biodiversity. Of course, ocean biodiversity is more vast because there's more ocean. The Earth is covered with at least 70% ocean and another 5% fresh water. A lot of the, you can see a lot of the diversity here is near the equator and not further north than 60 degrees north or south. Generally speaking, although, you know, there are some places where it is. This has to do with how the seas are coming close to shore. And so you can see that a lot of these places, of course, are, near water. And so there's water influence, or the moderating influence of water ecosystems on the terrestrial land masses. Another thing to know is the kinds of things that control where organisms are. So this diagram, which is in your book, you might want to see if you can find it. I'll see if I can get it in better focus here. All right, so I guess it's not going to do the whole thing. So anyway, there's things that control where organisms are or how they are distributed in the environment. And one of the first things to discuss is dispersal methods. So you can, especially if you're talking about plants, of course, plants can be dispersed by water or wind or even gravity, and sometimes animals. And animals are dispersed because they can move. They are dispersed in different ways. But if you're talking about how they're eggs or their reproductive effort is dispersed, of course in water that is a lot different than on land, and we've already talked about reproduction quite a bit. So there's those dispersal methods. So if dispersal is not limiting where they are, then they could possibly have behavioral limits. In other words, things that keep them from being in certain environments, behavior like they need to be near water, or they need to be, they like to burrow, in which case they couldn't be in a rocky environment, things like that. So behavior, if behavior is not limiting them, then you might have some other biological factors. In other words, are there other species, predator-prey relationships, things like that. And then if that is not limiting them, then there's the abiotic factors. So generally, when we're looking at ecology, the biggest things that are controlling where organisms are abiotic factors. And these are non-biological factors, things like water, air, which includes oxygen and nitrogen, carbon dioxide. If it's a water environment, perhaps salinity or pH. If it's terrestrial, of course, soil nutrients may be in effect, and those are all chemical abiotic factors. Some physical things that are really important are temperature and the amount of light that organism receives, especially if we're talking plants, and soil structure, and whether there's fire or not, how much moisture is there. And you're going to see that the two biggest controlling factors on where big communities, types of system called biomes are located have to do with temperature and the amount of rainfall that exists. Okay.